everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today we are cooking. Now, we don't have necessarily a fun recipe or anything that I found on Pinterest, but we're making another Everyplate meal. So today we have Southern style pork chops and gravy with roasted broccoli and mashed potatoes. But I thought this one would be interesting enough that you guys could follow along with me. So we washed the potatoes and the broccoli. Let's get cutting those up, put them in the water to make some mashed potatoes, and prep everything else we have. Just to let you know the ingredients that we're going to need in case you guys want to follow along, we're going to use 1 onion, and I typically use yellow onions, beef stock concentrate, potatoes, garlic powder, pork chops, dried thyme, garlic, sour cream, and broccoli. Some of these we're going to modify it a little bit, or you could always use more potatoes if need be for your mashed potatoes. And sour cream I usually don't put in my mashed potatoes, but these recipes usually do. I usually use milk and butter instead. But that's what the Everyplate box comes with. We grabbed our cutting board and a pot. So we're going to take our potatoes. And the Everyplate boxes come with 5 potatoes per. But again, if you want to make more potatoes or even less potatoes, you're more than welcome to. 5 is usually just the right amount for Ben and I to share. And usually we still have leftovers. It's typically 3 servings. So we're going to kind of dice them, slice them, throw them in the pot. And then we're going to fill the pot with cold water and then about, a teaspoon of salt or so, just to salt the water. Go ahead and pour your water in the pot. Probably need about not too much more actually. Just about there. Typically what I will do is add a little bit of Celtic salt as well. Just about that much, honestly. It's quite a little bit. That'll just help salt the water, salt the potatoes a little bit, and cook them as well. We're now going to move this to the stovetop, and we're going to place the burner on a high heat. Get that boiling to cook the potatoes. Next, we're going to cut up our broccoli. We're actually going to preheat our oven to 425 degrees, so we will start there. But we are going to cut off the ends of the broccoli. I guess you call them the stems. I'm going to cut this off and then cut them down and put them in a bowl to season them. So I'm going to chop off these ends. And I typically do this 2 to 3 times with the broccoli. All these little leaves sticking out. I'm going to grab a little discard bowl to make it a little bit easier as well. So we don't have to go to the trash 15 times. Cut off the ends. Cut the broccoli into some bite-sized pieces. Then throw them in our bowl where we will add some oil and seasoning to them. We're now going to season our broccoli. We're going to start with a drizzle of olive oil. 1, to help the seasoning stick, but 2, it'll help with the cooking process. I just use pink Himalayan salt. You can use whichever salt you'd like. Some black pepper. And I'm going to add a little bit of garlic as well. Mix it all together, and I honestly might need a little more oil. I'm then going to add the broccoli to the roasting pan. We're going to go ahead and throw it in the oven for about 15 to 20 minutes or so. You'll kind of see the little tree parts start to brown and the edges get crispy, and that's exactly what we're looking for. The last item that we're going to have to prep here is going to be our onion. Now, Everyplate does give you an onion in your box, but I have a leftover from another Everyplate meal. So we're going to go ahead and use this leftover onion. And this will be used to make kind of our gravy base. So I'm actually going to cut this in half this way. Then we're going to slice it this way. That's just personal preference. I kind of like the slightly smaller bit sometimes if you're doing it in a gravy. And you can use as much onion as you'd like. We love onions. So I'll probably do a little bit more than that. That's probably good. Right down the middle. And there we are. So that's all we need to prep and cut. Now we're going to get our pork chops ready. We're now going to prepare our pork chops. I will have to take these out of the package off screen. Then we're going to put them here on the paper towel, pat them with another paper towel on top to dry them out. Then we'll get this one seasoned. There's pork chop 1 and pork chop 2. These are actually fairly dry already, and I'm honestly not sure if I like the color of those, but that's okay. So we're going to make sure they're patted dry. This will also help dry that bottom side too. We're going to use my 4 favorite seasonings, so not the Holy Trinity, not sure what 4 would mean, but we have our Himalayan pink salt, generously seasoned. We have our black pepper. We're taking onion powder this time. And then our garlic powder. And now we're going to flip them over, do the same thing on the second side. Salt, pepper, onion, and garlic. Don't be afraid of your seasonings. They're your friend. Moving right along to cooking. So we're going to preheat our skillet to about a medium-high heat. This is going to be for the pork chops first. So we're going to put some oil in once it's heated, get a nice sear on it, cook it most of the way through, and we're going to take it out and make the gravy in the same pan. And then finish cooking them in the pan once we're done with the gravy. The pan is preheated now, so we're going to add some oil to it. Spread it around a little bit. It's probably a little more than we needed, but that's all right. I'm actually going to turn on my stove fan, so sorry if it gets a little loud. We're going to lay down our pork chops. So we're going to cook these about halfway through. And then what I'm going to do is put them in a piece of aluminum foil to kind of finish cooking through, keep the juices locked in as much as possible before we return them back to the pan once the gravy's been made. Over across the way here in this pot with our potatoes, we're just going to keep stirring it. I have a little, it's actually a meat fork that I use, but keep stirring it until you can bring up a potato and kind of smush it on the side and it's nice and soft. We definitely have probably 5 to 10 minutes on those. This smaller one is cooked about halfway through. So we're going to flip that one, but this big boy here, we're going to give just another minute or 2. This other one's good to flip over as well. Got a good sear on that for some flavor. And then everything actually at the bottom of the pan will be perfect for the gravy to give a little extra flavor. This smaller one here is ready to take off, so I'm going to put it on the foil behind the camera here. And don't worry about all of that burnt stuff. Again, it's going to pull up once we pour in the water and start making that gravy. This one's done as well, so we're going to take it out and put that on our foil as well and wrap it up until we're done with the gravy. We're going to start with some olive oil. Lots of calories here with the olive oil. Don't be afraid though. Now we're going to add in our sliced onions. Might help if I have the burner on. I'm going to go ahead and mix these up and coat them with oil. And we are going to brown them as much as possible without burning them, kind of caramelize them. Typically what I do is you'll fry it on 1 or 2 sides for a minute so it gets brown, and then throw in a little bit of water to help bring up those burnt bits on the bottom, and then it helps caramelize those onions as well. Stir those every couple of minutes. You can see it's starting to pull up some of that brown bits at the bottom. Let's go for another probably 2 to 3 minutes, and then we will add in a little bit of water. You want those brown bits on the onion just like that. Now we're going to do this in probably 2 batches. It'll sound loud real quick, but that will help caramelize the onions, and you'll see them turn nice and brown. We'll start pulling up those brown bits from the bottom, and then everything else will pull up once we truly make the gravy. So do this until the water evaporates, and do it 1 or 2 more times. Now that the onions are nice and brown and they're cooked down enough, we're going to start to make our gravy. So we're actually going to start by making a roux with the onions. So we're going to do a heaping tablespoon of butter there. Then typically you will use flour, but I do not have flour. So we're going to use a little bit of cornstarch once that gets melted in there a little bit. And this will just be to thicken up the gravy a little bit. That's probably plenty. Mix it all together and coat the onions. That'll make sure there's no clumps when you go to throw in the beef bouillon in the water. Going to throw in our beef bouillon, which I did find out you can actually buy this at the store. I have never looked for it, never thought about it until about 2 days ago. But you can buy it at the store. Let's throw that in. It says to only do a half a cup of water, but I think I'm going to do a little more. I don't care if it's on the watery side, and neither does my boyfriend. We're going to throw in some thyme. I'm going to go ahead and throw it all in. You use as much as you'd like. This is about, it says a teaspoon on here, which I think is the perfect amount. We're also going to add a little bit of our minced garlic. I put a hefty serving in there. I'm going to mix it up and bring it to a boil and let it start to thicken. The beef bouillon also thickens it a little bit, so it won't take too long here. To make it a little thicker and a little creamier, I am going to add just a splash of whole milk as well. Help kind of lighten it up a tad. Oh, that will be perfect. While this is thickening up and before we throw in the pork chops, I am going to strain my potatoes and we're going to start making our mashed potatoes. Now, Ben and I don't own a potato masher, so we are just going to actually use a fork. So I always add some butter. Kind of give them some buttery texture, make them nice and creamy. Try not to scratch the pan here while we're at it. You can also use an electric hand mixer. Ours, unfortunately, is a little too intense, so really it just flicks the potato everywhere. Or I have used a KitchenAid before as well, but I don't have my KitchenAid here with me. It's at my family's house. That's actually working quite nicely. I think we definitely cooked them enough, and these are softer potatoes. They're kind of golden, so the golden ones typically mash a little easier. They're a little bit creamier than the other ones. Before we continue with that, we are going to throw our pork chops back in to the gravy to cook those a little bit more, but really just to get the gravy coated in them and give them some nice flavor. So we'll give these just a minute or two, and they'll be ready when the potatoes are ready. Flip it once or twice. It'll be perfect. Now for the potatoes, I don't really need a lot of milk, so I'm just going to do a small splash. And again, that's just to make it a little bit creamier. And you make them however you'd like. I personally like them a little bit chunky, but a little bit creamy as well. Some people might want to skin their potatoes. We don't. We like the vitamins and minerals from the potato. No harm here. Now we're going to season. So we come back with our 3 salt, pepper, and garlic powder. Mix that together, get the seasoning everywhere, and then we will give it a little taste test, see if it needs more of anything. I'm going to flip over the pork chops, get them soaked in gravy on this side. Then we'll let them sit for about another minute or so. This is looking good. Let's go ahead and plate it up and give it a try. This is what it looks like all plated. I will say it's a lot of broccoli because Ben doesn't like broccoli, so I took it all. But let's go ahead and give it all a try. Well, actually, let's start with the broccoli. I like broccoli anyways, but oven roasting it gives it a different flavor, but in such a good way. Oh, it's kind of like the only way I want to make broccoli anymore. Now let's try our pork. A little bit of that gravy. Are you kidding me? And I put some gravy on the mashed potatoes too. Delicious. Holy cow. Thank you all for coming to experience me making some pork chops and gravy today for dinner. I hope you'll stick around and experience more.